This is what we're making, a very small chain with soldered links. I suggest you use a really small focused flame for this. With the Smith's Mini Torch, it's a number 4 tip. If you have a little pencil torch, it may or may not work for this. Do a few links, have a go. It may be too broad a flame, because this, like I say, this really needs to be a focused flame. We're going to do a little bit of precision soldering today. For those of you that haven't converted to metric yet, this is Tim McCrate's book, and there's a chart in the back. So we're going to use 24 gauge wire, and we're going to use an 11 gauge mandrel, which is just the shank of the bits that we use in our Fordham handpiece. So we end up with this nice small set of jump rings. And I suggest that you use either a 5/0 or a 6/0 blade in your saw, because they're small enough that you need a fine set of teeth to cut them, otherwise it'll be really rough. So you can see how small these are. Now, I just hold mine on the bench peg. And cut this way. And when you get a lot of these cut, assemble them like you would normal jump rings. Just be really precise about how the ends come together. You can use whatever pliers you want for this. I always use parallel jaw when I'm doing mine. And you want, like I say, as precise a fit as you can get. So assemble your chain. For those of us that have converted to metric, this is 0.5 wire and 2.3 millimeter mandrel. So there's the beginning of our chain. So now we're going to put this on our third hand. The pieces of solder that you need for this are about 0.5 millimeter long. Very small bits. And we're going to pick solder it. So you can see how small these pieces are. Okay. Now normally I use a number 7 tip for almost everything. I'm using a number 4 tip for this one. So isolate your solder bit, heat your pick, touch the end of it to your solder, and you end up with your small piece of solder on the end of your solder pick. A small amount of flux on the join, small amount, and you want your flame to be perfectly on that join and nothing else. Now what I do is I basically brush it on and off, bring the joint up to temperature, put my solder in place, and the solder will flow. And I do, with these small joins, I do always just go on and off the join, because if you stay there very long, you'll melt it. Then I use my tweezers, shift the next one up. Make sure that your join is always straight up and down, and as far away from the third hand as you can get it. Now what you don't want to do is you don't want the flame to go down. This needs to be a very small flame, and it needs to be pointed only at the join that you're trying to solder. So I'll pick up another little piece of solder, and I just That's all we want. So keep going until you get to the end. It's fiddly, but it's good practice. So here's all of our little jump rings soldered together. Now what you don't want to do when you're soldering this, if your flame goes down, every one of these little links will solder itself to the next one. So make sure that your flame is pointed up and it's only on the one join that you're trying to solder. This is the beginning of our little chain, and if you'll notice, I'll zoom in so you can see, but that half-mil piece of solder is more than enough. So we definitely don't want any more than that because we don't want any lumps. So this is our chain. Now we'll make these oval and twist them 90 degrees. So it's just like making a regular curb chain, only tiny. So that's the project.